Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. I have just finished Memoirs of Hadrian. This book is the featured book in the group Classics and Company, spearheaded by Novella and Micah Cummins. I will link their announcement videos for the group read along below in the description. It's the featured book for the month of June. So I started it last month and just finished it today. And first, let me just preface by saying I have done writing in the past, and I have written one historical drama and failed in writing 3 other historical dramas. So I have a sense of how difficult a project like this is to do. So I want you to understand when I make a critical remark, you have to subsume that to my overriding admiration for what the author did. That said, that does not mean it would be a wholehearted recommendation that I would give to this book for anybody. In many respects, I was disappointed with it, but it was an overwhelmingly positive experience for me from the standpoint of history, because I don't have any real good grasp of Roman history, even though I finished reading Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire this year. So for a long time, I've had a pretty good grasp, not really a long time, maybe a dozen years or so, fairly good grasp of the time of Julius Caesar / Augustus, which is probably the critical period to know about or to learn first about if you're coming out of nowhere. I had really no sense of the age of Hadrian, and this book has given me that. The picture may be skewed in certain ways. The book is very modern in its outlook, but that said, Yourcenar has assembled a cast of incidental characters, mainly persons about whom we know a little something or who left some writings behind. And so for the first time, I have a sense of who was around and what was going on politically and interpersonally in the Roman Empire at the time. And I don't think that those little bits of factual data are wrong. I think Yourcenar did a masterful job, really, of assembling all of these disparate pieces. The 3 historic drama projects that I attempted, which failed because of my inability to do the research and read all of the materials. And you get the sense that she did read everything. That has a flip side of possibly some negativity in that Hadrian doesn't seem to know very much beyond what we know, so to speak, although we know probably more than Yourcenar knew at the time. And I'll get into that a little bit more, I think. But for me, for the first time, I understand this Hadrianic period, and it really provides me with a basis for historic reading or historical reading henceforth, which is quite wonderful. Gibbon, in his book, started the decline of the Roman Empire with Commodus, which is the son of Marcus Aurelius, the recipient of the letter which Hadrian supposedly writes and which forms the basis of this novel. He later rethought and revised that and thought that the beginning of the decline should have been pulled back further, earlier. And it may indeed be said that the seeds of the decline were in the beginning. That would be a very organic way of seeing things and probably correct, but that's neither here nor there for me. That's not my business. So let me tell you, let's see if I can find the sentence or two that sort of annoyed me at the end. Oh yeah, Hadrian is on the verge of dying, and you get the sense he actually expired like 5 minutes after the pen fell from his fingertips in the last paragraph. Don't get me wrong, the ending worked fairly well. The narrative, all in all, works pretty well, and there are some immensely touching passages, some lovely writing. Philosophically, the book is a little bit stupid. And so let me just go into that a little bit. If you remember T.S. Eliot writing about the Shakespeare line, what is it? As flies to wanton boys, so we are to the gods, or something like that. And the point was, Shakespeare's philosophy in that passage was kind of dumb. And that's why Dante was superior to Shakespeare in that regard, because Dante had for his philosophy Thomas Aquinas. The argument could easily go the other way. I don't recall if T.S. Eliot did, but for the sake of drama, Shakespeare's multifold philosophies would function better and would be superior than to pinning everything to Thomas Aquinas. I can't imagine such a play working very well, and I don't remember how much Eliot's play about Becket tried to do anything like that. I bet he did peg it more to a single philosophy like that, although the play was not bad, as I recall. So I won't go into details. I did not take any notes. I don't like to mark up my books. If I had read it on an ebook, I would have made little notations and then could refer to them. But at the last, there was a sentence that really struck out to me that reveals the defect of the book. I am what I always was. I am dying without essential change. Human life is change. And if you live an entire human life without change, that would have to be considered a failure. Now, it's not possible humanly to live without change, but artistically it is indeed possible. So let us say it's a failure in art. Now, I understand the difficulties in that for a figure like Hadrian. We don't have so full a picture of Hadrian across time. We just have little bits here and here and here. And it's very hard to get a sense of a figure changing, just as it's very hard to get a sense of Socrates changing, although we know he must. The young Socrates must have been a different man to the old Socrates. But we have almost no way to pin that down. And I presume similarly with Hadrian. So Hadrian does not change. And that is why the book opens with him bloviating and ends with him bloviating. It's got 6 chapters, 4 longer ones and then one shorter at each tail end, or at the head and the tail, I guess you would say. Yeah. And the crux of the story, or at least I believe the impetus for writing the story, was the beautiful young man, Antinous, I think his name was. And a fault with the novel is we never get any sense of Antinous as a living being. He is a beautiful, distant figure. And it occurred to me in reading this that if there is any, well, let me see, if there is any similar person that we could point to nowadays or in recent memories, it would be Princess Diana. He was the Princess Diana of his day. And when Princess Diana died her stupid death, there was a huge outpouring of grief and books written and all of that. One of her sons is still living off of the myth of his mother, the stories of paparazzi somehow causing her death when they were not nearby. It was the fault of a drunk driver in whose car they willingly set themselves as passengers. It is quite possible that Hadrian's young boyfriend died an equally stupid death. We don't know. But what the book fails to give us is a sense of Antinous as a living Princess Diana. She was much beloved by her constituent populace whilst she was living. And that only fed into the reaction to her death and the sort of place she occupies now in history, in British history at least. We get no sense at all of why this young man was so beloved at large. So it's a bit disappointing. It would be hard, I suppose, to imagine something like that. But the idea that after this young man dies, Hadrian single-handedly goes and establishes the cult and erects temples for this young man. And then everybody is just so smitten with the beauty of his reproductions in statues is just too far-fetched. So from a historic standpoint, it doesn't work. Once again, because of this book, I am having to alter my reading plans. So instead of plunging into the tales of the history of the Crusades, I'm going to shift and read this book. Not that I have especially high hopes for it. The author, Anthony Everitt, I read something recently that his shtick, so to speak, is to take famous historical personages and turn them into sort of a gay icon and then write all about them as a gay icon. Now, I read his book on Cicero probably 10 years ago, and I don't recall him doing that in there. I don't think it would be very easy to make a case for Cicero as a gay icon. But he has another book about Augustus, which I believe, after I read the Cicero book, which I did like, I just kept my eye open at the used bins, and picked up these dollar copies or whatever they were. I don't remember. And so now I feel, even though Everitt has a little bit of a smudge on his reputation, according to this paragraph that I read somewhere by somebody, I'm going to read it. Biography of its own is not a very useful tool unless you already have some of the history under your belt. And I feel that Yourcenar has already given me enough history. So between what she wrote, what little I gleaned from the Gibbon synopsis, because he did his little brief overview, I think that I may be able to handle the biography. So I'm going to go from a fictionalized memoir of Hadrian and go into a little bit of a biography. Now, of course, in his introduction, Everitt had to make mention of the famous novel, and let me see, he wrote pretty tellingly about it, if I can find it. Hadrian was by no means blah blah. No preface. I thought it was in the preface, but now I'm not finding it. I thought it was right at a page turn, and I don't see it. Okay, here it is. Pardon the delay. I'm sorry to waste your time like that. I should be better prepared. The memoirs are a masterpiece, but just as a fake antique, completely convincing when it first appears on the market, loses its authenticity with the passage of time, they now reveal as much about mid-20th century French literary attitudes as they do of 2nd century Rome. Yourcenar's Hadrian is a romantic rationalist with a taste for the exotic, a classical André Gide. When you are reading the Memoirs of Hadrian, it just reeks of modernity. It doesn't trouble me. The fact that the book had no story did trouble me. The only other historic fiction that I'm really familiar with is Romola by George Eliot, and no, I'm grabbing the wrong book. And Yourcenar was no Eliot. But that said, it's been a worthwhile thing. But unfortunately, now I have to go on and read a biography of him, a biography that I also will have to be a little suspect about. But it just so happens that this is what I have. I would perhaps rather read a dry academic history of the period, but a popular history will have to do. So there, I've totally lost my train of thought. I don't know what I was going to say. I think if you read the Memoirs of Hadrian, you have to start the opening paragraphs, and if it moves you as it moved me, make your decision based on that. I'll leave that there. I don't know if I will post this or not, but thank you for stopping by.